Hi, you're listening to The Sociology Show, a podcast about absolutely anything to do with the wonderful world of sociology. Whether you're a teacher, a lecturer, a student, or just taking a passing interest, this podcast will look at a range of issues from social class, ethnicity, gender, sexuality, religion, crime, education, and anything else that sociology has to offer. My name is Matthew Wilkin, and each episode I will speak to someone working in the field of sociology and let them explain all about their own interests, their research, and their experiences. So, put your earphones in, turn the volume up, and let's be sociology geeks together, eh? Hello, and welcome to the Sociology Show podcast. Do you want to start by telling us who you are and what you do, please?
Yes, my name is Sidsel Harder. It rhymes with whistle, Sidsel. And I'm basically sex, drugs, and rock and roll, or maybe sex, drugs, and digital media sociologist. So I've been working with intoxication and nightlife and sexuality and what people do, what kind of sex people have, what kind of gender relation people have in nightclubs, which was what I did and sometimes do before. And then when the whole sort of sexting, revenge porn in quotation marks cases started to pop up, I started working on that, and I did my PhD on that, and I'm now doing a postdoctoral international research project on what kind of porn people report to hotlines for child sexual abuse material.
Thank you. Very interesting area of sociology. Some say some areas of sociology are quite dull and mundane, but what you're studying certainly isn't.
And then again, like pornography is a part of 80% of Danish people's everyday life, in a sense. So in a way, pornography is sort of the perfect fit for where sociology of everyday life means sociology of transgression or deviance, if you want.
Yeah, and it's that actually that I was interested in, and that's why we got in touch on Twitter. The discussion on pornography is very divisive amongst people on Twitter and in the sociological world. And I can see anything from porn in any form should be banned, should be completely outlawed, to people at the other end of the scale saying, you know, it's a natural interest, it's a curiosity, and porn has existed as long as back to sort of caveman time, you know, caveman paintings. I wanted to get your view on it, and we'll try and work out where perhaps you stand on that argument as well. So what's your initial view on pornography? I know that's such a big question, but what is your view on whether it should exist, be banned, and so on as well?
If I could start another place, I would start by saying that you're completely right, that unfortunately, the porn debate, going back to what we call the sex wars in the 80s, isn't actually a debate so much as a war. It is a place, I think, like no other field I know of, where people are completely divided. It's almost like, and it has been compared to the climate debate, where you have, except it's not just that you have some people who are unscientific who denies climate change. It's actually two completely valid academic fields that are completely divided on a topic. It's divided what we should do about porn. It's divided what porn is. It's divided whether it's good or bad. What it actually does. There unfortunately very, very few standpoints that academics are actually able to agree on if they're either pro or con. And that is, I mean, I'm trying to find a nice thing to say about that. Maybe that people are it's very deep within people, that it's something that's a part of the sociology that's very close to people's heart. but actually it's not. Like, I think for a lot of reasons, it means that the porn debate just does not happen in sociology, because we don't want, it's very hard to have that debate within sociology, where we're used to having some kind of middle ground to stand on. So a lot of the pornography debate does happen in media studies, or in more sort of almost medical public health, maybe not so much public health, but sort of like sort of addiction studies and whatever. That being said, is the long and winding road where I'm not going to tell you that I'm either pro or against. I think that's just a main flaw in pornography. You're not asking a food sociologist if they're for or against food. You might ask them if they're for or against meat. Yeah. And without making too many puns on that, I would say that I am definitely in the camp that would say that we're not going to be able to progress with pornography by being against it. So I was trained within the pro-pornography field, in the sense that I attended a class at University of California, Berkeley, with one of the first professors that in media study who invented porn studies out of the idea that you can't, like some scholars have argued, Catherine McKinnon, for example, and George Dworkin, that pornography is wrong in itself. Linda Williams was saying that you have to watch pornography to know what it's about, and you have to talk specifically about what kind of images in porn are bad and why are they bad. So it's much more of an empirical discipline. But I will also say that I think and Williams has come back to this too, that there are definite problems in the pro-porn camp, if you will, in the sense that we tend to, that kind of scholarship doesn't always engage with the problematic sides of pornography, or even the mainstream sides of pornography. It does to some extent. It does to some extent say that the reason why we should be interested in porn is that it has good and bad sides, and we want to work on the bad ones. But it does tend to steer towards some of the niches in porn, which is not where the real problems is always, and it's not what I find most interesting. That was a very long answer.
No, I think that's really important to establish, because, just to say pornography in general, well, that's huge, isn't it? We're talking anything from what would be regarded as soft porn right up to the most extreme. You mentioned Catherine McKinnon there, Andrea Dworkin. Is that true that the majority of those that want it to be banned is coming from sort of the radical feminist element?
I think that's a good question. Today, I do think that most people that I know that are critical of porn are building on McKinnon's work, which is important, and which has pointed to important elements. I'm wondering if I can think of anyone who's against pornography who hasn't read McKinnon. I don't think I can.
Yeah, because one of the arguments that I've seen,
especially in the UK, right?
Yeah, true. Yeah, one of the arguments that I've seen come up, which I'm really interested in, and it does go into media studies as well, is this idea that if people watch porn, then it will influence their behaviours, almost like the hypodermic needle, hypodermic syringe theory. Which in other areas of media studies has kind of been disproven, hasn't it? If you watch violent films, you will become violent, etc. So I'm not sure where that argument stands up.
I think if you're pro-porn, you're definitely going to say that it doesn't, and that it's. But then if you're going to build on that whole media scholarship. But then if you're against pornography, you're going to say that pornography is not like any other kind of media. You're going to say that pornography is not a form of art or pop culture. It's a form of degradation of women. And that is going to influence you in a way directly, or it is going to influence you the way, as one of the ways in which hegemonic masculinity is being is part of your upbringing and your sexual script in a way. It's just that even sexual scripts theory would say that there are loads of different ways that you are being developed as a sexual being. So porn wouldn't be the only one, and it wouldn't make you do anything per se. But I mean, if you are against pornography, you would say that, yes, at the furthest end, you could say that the people in pornography are being harmed by pornography. The people watching pornography are being harmed, but the people that are around people that are watching pornography are also being harmed. So pornography is bad to everybody, everywhere. And I mean, before we go into saying that's just not a valid argument, I think it's important that we do, for some kind of sexual images, hold to that still. So we do no longer talk about child pornography. It's being changed legally in a lot of countries, but there is that idea in the study of child sexual abuse material that is an image that's bad for you, not only if you're in the image, if you are seeing the image, but also if you're in a society that's seeing the image. So I think that just depends on, are you going to go at this from a media studies perspective where a visual is a visual, or are you going to go at it from a feminist perspective where you're going to say this is not just an image, this is a direct representation of women's subordination?
Because this is probably almost impossible to measure. Is there any evidence that since the ubiquity of pornography and easy access to it, there has been an increase in violence towards women, paedophilia and so on? Because many would say that that's always been around, it pre-existed pornography in the form that we view it now anyway.
I mean, Denmark was the first country to legalize pornography, right? And that happened when, at that point, one of the Danish sociologists, criminologists, did make that study to see if the legalization meant that there were fewer rapes, which he thought it did. But I think at this point, I think the best study on that issue is the study that tried to do a control experiment with a control group of men that hadn't seen pornography and weren't able to find any. And that became the study. So at this point, how are you going to measure that? I don't think you can. And I don't think it makes that much sense either, because not unless you have, licensed pornography that's sort of out there in the same way for every kind of person. It's obvious that different people are watching different kind of pornography. And like you said, pornography is a lot of different things. It's likely that it's going to affect you in different ways. Yeah.
Because one of the things that the porn companies can do, I think Pornhub did a piece of research on this. They can look at the genres that are being tapped into, that are most looked at. Does that give us any indication as to what's going on?
I mean, I always get a journalist at that time of year when they release it. It's going to say, "Are you going to say anything interesting about this?" I think that's hard. Both because of how it's done and how the research is done, and also because of what does that even tell us? I think the most interesting things about Pornhub genres is that pornography is, you can say that it's been around, it's been found at the walls of Pompeii, it's always been there, but it's also fluctuates like fashion does in a way. So the porn genres and what's interesting for people is gonna shift. I think actually just the idea that you make those kind of statistics is interesting. And I mean, apart from that, I sometimes try to make like ideas that now people are watching more like porn that between a stepmom and a stepson and whatever now, because there's new family patterns. But then I talk to people that are watching those genres and they're like, nah. So I mean, I think it's really hard to, mostly those statistics are being used by people that would say, is it becoming more, are more people watching more violent porn, for example, right? So that's going to tap into that argument. Or is it true that women are only watching women's movies and so on? So I don't know. I think the most interesting stuff about Pornhub statistics is the traffic. So like you could, for example, I used to always show this, like you can see that in situations where something happens, that's going to influence people's pattern, whether it's that people think they're going to be nuked and then don't watch porn until they know they aren't, and then they watch a lot, or whether it's right after Game of Thrones is airing, I'm going to be searching for that kind of porn. Like those things are fun, I think, and they're an argument to people, none of whom is here, who think that porn is not really a sociological subject, that porn should stay within media studies. I mean, to me, even though I don't buy into the idea that behavior is going to be directly influenced by the meaning of porn, I do think that it's important to study it sociologically, and it's just not happening a lot.
The Sociology Show podcast relies on the kind contributions of sponsorship and donations. If you enjoy the show, then you can help with the hosting costs by donating as little as £5 on the GoFundMe page. Simply visit uk.gofundme.com and search for The Sociology Show. If you can donate, then you will be sent a Sociology Show pen as a small thank you for your continued support of the show.
I mean, one of the sociological issues you just touched upon is what women watch, and something that interests me is a lot of the research you talked about, the control group, seems to be the effect pornography has on men. Does pornography make men more violent and so on? It seems to ignore the fact that women obviously watch porn too. I don't know if that's in line with your research as well.
Yes, sure. I mean, women, I came at this from substance use and misuse, and it's the same argument there, like, because it's mostly men, are we going to research men more? I think in some ways that's actually not happening in pornography studies, because a lot of pornography studies is interested in women, either on both sides, actually, either saying that pornography can liberate sexuality. It can be a way that women get inspired to have more interesting sex, but it's also, on the other side, we have studies that show that more people read 50 Shades of Grey if they were in an abusive relationship. So, I mean, you can argue about that, and if it's even porn, but I think what we do know is women watch less porn. They watch it less frequently. It is a part of their lives, even if they don't watch it. Women are not just watching women's genres. A lot of women did read 50 Shades of Grey. A lot of them liked it. Some of them didn't. Some because they had too much sex. Some because it had too little. So, I mean, just the idea that do women watch porn is a little flawed, because a lot of different women are going to watch a lot of different porn in a lot of different ways. It's just that it's more tabooed, and that maybe was something that 50 Shades tapped into because it was coming out at the same time as the Kindle.
Yeah, I was just wondering if it is just consumed in a different way, that this might be very stereotypical. Men are more likely to watch porn, women are more likely to read erotic literature. Is that true?
That is still true.
Yeah.
It's also still true that men are more likely to use pornography for masturbation, and women are more likely to use it for inspiration, and not inspiration as I'm going to go do that, but more just not directly connected, and more like techniques and stuff. It's also true that women are often or sometimes interested in something that has more of a narrative, that leaves more up to imagination. But then you have someone like Susanna Posanen in Finland, who has also argued that if women want something that's just stimulating for fantasy, there's a lot better literature to go look at. And for porn, women are going to want the real thing, and women are going to be as likely to look at anal sex or gangbang. But I do think what is important to remember is that men are less influenced by the critique of porn than women are. So in a way, porn, I think a lot of women will tell me like, but I don't watch it. And I mean, a lot of that is also because you're going to have the whole feminist argument going in your brain. You're going to be, and some men are going to have that now, some men are going to have that more. But I think for women, it's often really, really hard to not be judging all the time, feeling that they have to navigate, evaluate what's happening. Why is she saying that? Is she actually enjoying it? What's she for like? And that can be exhausting. To all the time question whether what you're doing is okay because it was something that you were brought up not to do.
Yeah. I saw a feminist argument that a lot of females watch female on female porn, actually, even if they didn't consider themselves a lesbian anyway.
Or male on male.
Yeah.
And I had this discussion with a journalist. He was like, no. And which is so funny though, because female on female is something that so many men see. So why wouldn't women watch male on male? That's because we have a different idea of what the male body looked like. And it's because we have this sort of this idea that there has to be some kind of identification. Why should there?
I did interview someone, sorry, their name escapes me, who wrote a book called Girls Who Like Boys Who Like Boys. I'll have to try and find out. Yeah. I did want to touch on what the legality is, what the legal restrictions are. Obviously, it differs from country to country, place to place. What are the main rules in terms of what is allowed and what isn't allowed?
That is very different. And especially in the UK, you have a very discussed law on extreme pornography. In a country like Denmark, the limit is 18. So you can't watch someone have sex, even though they're above the age of consent. You can consent to having sex, but you can't consent to filming it. And if people are under 18, it's not only illegal to distribute or to produce, but it's also illegal to possess. But Denmark is the first country. It's one of the most liberal countries. So a lot of countries, and that's what you see statistically, at least up to 210, and I think that goes on today, that you are seeing generally a liberalization worldwide, but you're also seeing more and more it's also there are little sort of corners that keeps getting covered up. So whether it's violent pornography, whether it's animals, whether it's and so the specialization of legislation keeps going on, even though we are becoming more liberal.
Who makes that decision as to what is too graphic or not? Which genres are in and which are out?
I think the depressing answer today is that that's the money min. If you listen to a podcast like the Financial Times Hot Money, I think that's the best illustration of what happens when pornography is online. It's free, and the only way that the only people that's really gonna like monitor it is the people who are monetizing on it. So that means if you want to have Visa and MasterCard supporting your transactions for advertisements and subscriptions, you want to stay within some of their ideas, and those are to large extent very arbitrary and very influenced by media stories and people. So Financial Times covered how there's a Pulitzer Prize journalist in the New York Times who wrote critically about Pornhub, and that meant that a financial an activist working within the financial sector read that. Bill Ackman, he called his friend from the tennis club, who is the CEO of MasterCard, and MasterCard shuts down Visa too, even though Pornhub deletes 2/3 of their clips and you can no longer download. So that's how decisions get made in digital pornography, which, I mean, being very Danish about it, I think I don't want my money men to deciding what kind of porn I'm watching. I want my politicians to do that, and I want the industry to be in on it.
I should have guessed that, shouldn't I? I should have guessed that was the answer. I wondered who else, to get a balanced argument, if listeners, sociologists are interested in the debate and they want a balanced argument on both sides, alongside yourself, who else should listeners